What is the role of yeast in bread making? 1. Yeast basics. Yeast is a single-celled fungus used in bread making to leaven dough and create texture. The most common type used in baking is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Yeast is crucial for producing the light, airy texture in bread by fermenting sugars and releasing gases. 2. Fermentation process. Yeast ferments the sugars in flour, producing carbon dioxide gas and alcohol. This process, known as fermentation, causes the dough to rise as the gas gets trapped in the dough's gluten network. The alcohol evaporates during baking, leaving behind a light, airy crumb. 3. Leavening agent. The carbon dioxide produced by yeast acts as a natural leavening agent. As the gas bubbles expand during baking, they cause the dough to rise and develop a porous texture. This leavening effect is what gives bread its volume and soft texture. 4. Flavor development. Yeast fermentation also contributes to the development of complex flavors in bread. During fermentation, yeast produces various compounds, including alcohols and organic acids, which enhance the flavor and aroma of the bread. The longer the fermentation time, the richer the flavor profile. 5. Dough structure. Yeast affects the structure of the dough by strengthening the gluten network. As yeast ferments, it produces enzymes that help break down some of the starches in flour into simpler sugars. These sugars are then used by the yeast to produce gas, which further supports the gluten structure and improves the dough's elasticity. 6. Proofing time. Proofing, or rising time, is crucial for yeast activity. During proofing, yeast multiplies and ferments the dough, allowing it to rise. Proper proofing time ensures that the dough develops the right texture and volume. Underproofed dough may result in dense bread, while overproofed dough may collapse. 7. Temperature and yeast activity. Temperature significantly impacts yeast activity. Yeast is most active at warm temperatures, typically between 75 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 24 to 29 degrees Celsius. Too high or too low temperatures can slow down or inhibit yeast activity, affecting dough rise and texture. Maintaining the right temperature is essential for successful bread making. 8. Types of yeast. Different types of yeast can be used in bread making, including active dry yeast, instant yeast, and fresh yeast. Active dry yeast needs to be dissolved in water before use, while instant yeast can be mixed directly into dry ingredients. Fresh yeast, though less common, is used in some traditional recipes. Each type has specific usage instructions and affects dough differently. 9. Yeast and salt interaction. Salt affects yeast activity by controlling the rate of fermentation. While salt strengthens the gluten network and enhances flavor, it can also inhibit yeast if used in excess. It's important to balance salt and yeast in recipes to ensure proper dough rise and texture. 10. Troubleshooting yeast issues. Common yeast-related issues include inactive yeast, insufficient rising, and overly dense bread. Inactive yeast can result from expired or improperly stored yeast. Ensuring proper proofing conditions and correct ingredient ratios helps prevent these problems and achieves the desired bread texture. By understanding the role of yeast in bread making, you can improve your baking skills and create better quality bread with the right texture, flavor, and rise.